This morning, my big idea is I'm going to talk about a book. One of my clients suggested I read a book called Radical Candor by a woman named Kim Scott. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. And that Kim Scott, Radical Candor. Nice cover. Bright orange, almost red, and it's pretty eye-catching. And every once in a while I read a business book that I like a lot, so I thought I would share this book with you. Hello, Leo. Thanks for watching this morning. Radical Candor basically makes a point, which is that the best way to communicate with other people in business is to be very honest. At times it might feel like you're even being brutally honest, and to an outsider it might seem like you're being too honest or too harsh or too brutal. Although one of the points Kim Scott makes is that if you know somebody and you know them reasonably well, you can say things that might sound harsh to an outsider but wouldn't seem so harsh to somebody you know well, because they know a little bit about you and they have an idea of what you mean. One of the reasons why I resonated with this gal's message is that it describes my style pretty well. So either she took a page out of my book or I'm taking a page out of her book. I'm assuming it's some of both. What she's suggesting isn't unique to her, but it's unusual. You don't see it a lot. One of the things that my employees said to me all the time was, it's refreshing to work for somebody who tells it just like it is. And that's was not only the hallmark of me being an employer and with my employees, but it's also one of the things I do in my consulting. I tell people what I see and what I think needs to be addressed, and sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. One of the points that I make to my clients a lot, and this would be an example of radical candor, is that almost every problem they've got is of their own making. One of the things I say to people all the time is, as a business owner, you're totally 100% responsible for your successes. Meaning everything you do and you do well, and all the wonderful things that happen to your business, they come to you because of you, because you did a great job. Unfortunately, the converse is true as well, and this is a hard pill for some people to swallow. And by that I mean, every problem you have in your business, it's your fault. You're the one that made that problem. If you weren't there, you wouldn't have that problem. And as a business owner, the problem is yours. And if you say, well, somebody else did it, I didn't do it, you're just shifting the responsibility. When you're a business owner, even if an employee does something wrong, it's your responsibility, because you hire that person and they're working at your direction. And if they do something you don't like, then that's your fault. They've also screwed up and something has to be done about that. But the problem is that you haven't either given them the direction that they need, or they don't care enough about you to do the right thing, or we can go on and on about the number of reasons why someone might screw up. Sometimes people just make mistakes, and when people just make mistakes, well, okay, they just make mistakes. So I'm not going to give you a complete review of this book. I'm going to just suggest that if you're interested in the subject of how to manage groups of people and how to get really good results, this would be a really good book. Miss Scott talks about an area that I don't hang a shingle out for professionally. I sometimes get into it with some of my clients about the importance of the way you manage and the way you lead. This whole area is an area that is a little different from what I do. It's an area called executive coaching or leadership coaching, or sometimes it's life coaching, or and sometimes people who call themselves business coaches, this is what they do. They work with you, and they work with you on your leadership style, your communication style, and they do it for the purpose of helping you get better results. I like the sound of all that. My work with customers is just a little bit different. I'm more interested in the structure and the processes of a business. So what I do and what leadership coaches do go hand in hand, and sometimes both of us, or a guy like me and a guy or gal like a leadership coach, would be in a company together working on helping a company get where it wants to go. But I'm much more about the structure of the company or the process of the company. I'd like to mention two things that she talks about that I think are really important, and I'm going to touch on each one of them just a little bit. The first is she talks about the value of a one-to-one meeting with direct reports, people who report directly to you. And I am a big believer in a one-to-one meeting, and I can't say it strongly enough. I'm more than a big believer in a one-to-one meeting. I think it's an absolute requirement, and if you don't do it, you're giving away the responsibility for your company to somebody else, and that's just wrong. You want to take responsibility for your company, and the way to do it is to manage your company, and you must manage the people that report directly to you. The people that report directly to you need some of your time, and they need some of your time on a consistent basis. So I'm looking for a one-to-one meeting that happens on a regular basis. Most of the people I work with, the one-to-one meeting should be weekly, and it should last about an hour, and it should always cover the same ground. And I won't go into all the details of a one-to-one meeting, but it should certainly include how do I think you're doing as an employee, and it should also include how do you, the employee, think I'm doing as your boss. And this is a place where this radical candor idea really comes into play, because the whole idea of asking those two questions in a meeting that is standing, meaning that it happens every week, is that you can build an environment of safety and trust where you and the employee can get used to the idea that you're going to talk straight with each other. You're not going to beat around the bush. You're not going to talk in platitudes. You're not going to avoid the tough questions. You're going to hit the nail on the head. You are going to say what needs to be said in order to promote an environment where you all can do a really good job. So that's one of the things I really liked about this book. Kim Scott stresses the importance of a one-to-one meeting. Another point she makes that I like a lot, and she's saying that it's very hard to get people to do what you want them to do when you order them to do it, because what happens then is that often comes with a feeling of resentment from the employee back to you. Most people do not like to be ordered around and told what to do, and yet many managers thinks that that's what delegating is. Delegating, which is something you need to be good at. Delegating for many managers is I'm going to give out orders. Good morning, Eric. It's good to see you this morning as well. Thanks for joining me this morning. For those of you that have just joined, I'm talking about a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. So what she goes into at some length, and it's really worth reading, is how do you get a group of people to do what you want them to do without ordering them around. And a real quick summation is you would get them to participate in the agenda that results in the marching orders. And if the group, let's say it's you and a group of 4 people who all report to you, and you want to set the stage for the upcoming week, or you're trying to build a plan around something. If the process starts with all of you in a room talking about it, and you laying out the agenda, which is this is something I want to do, and this is where I'd like to go, let's all put our heads together and figure out how we're going to get there. Generally, that results in a really good situation where by the time you have the plan, everybody who's been in the meeting feels like they have been a participant in it, and they own some of the result. And so in that kind of environment, the people in the room would be much more likely to enthusiastically take their part in the role of what it is they're trying to do. So she goes into it in great detail, and it takes a little more time than I can develop in a short live video. but she describes the whole thing really well. Her background, I don't know her at all, and I've never met her. Her background is that she worked at Google and she worked at Apple, and so she's from the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, and her experience has been in these companies that are high-flying companies where there's a huge emphasis on what's called high-performing teams, people that work together and get really good results. So her experience comes from that, and her advice is geared towards somebody who's in that kind of environment. That doesn't mean you can't learn a lot from her. You can, but you want to make sure that what you take away is applicable to you. So if you're in a brick and mortar, blue collar kind of business, your language might be different, your pacing might be different, but the concepts are the same. The concept is if you want a good result from a team, get the team to buy into it right at the very beginning by allowing them to help shape what it is that's supposed to be happening. Okay, that's going to be it for this morning. That's my book review. Thank you to my client who suggested